Hey guys, it's Bobby Legs, and welcome to another episode of Bobby Legs Loves Watches. Today I will be reviewing the Marathon GSAR Government Diver. Now, I like to thank my buddy Art for lending the GSAR in for review. Marathon has enjoyed a long history and relationship with the US and Canadian military forces. The GSAR actually stands for Government Search and Rescue. What a great moniker for this diver. Now, before I get into the review, please remember to like and subscribe and click that bell icon to get notifications every time I upload new videos. I love making these videos and I hope you like them too. And also, please follow me on Instagram. Now, let's get on with the review. So let's dive into the specs. We have a 41 millimeter case diameter, 48 millimeter lug to lug, and they are holes here at the lugs so you can do some easy bracelet and strap changing, and also the lugs ever so slightly point down. We have a 14 millimeter case thickness with a flat sapphire crystal. We have 20 millimeter lug width, 316L stainless steel throughout the case and the bracelet. The bracelet does taper down to this clasp stamped in this portion over here. You have 5 micro adjusts and a diver's extension right here. Fold over clasp, so you get that nice little click, and fold over for security. Here we have the Marathon name engraved here. And so while we're back here, let's take a look at the back of the case. It is a screw down case, and there's a whole lot of writing here. You do have the automatic 316L stainless steel, Swiss made, 30 atmospheres, meaning 300 meters water resistance, and some of the certifications also are described in the back of the case. This is a 300 meter diver. It is ISO certified. The knurl, you do have these crown guards that come up to the crown, and the knurl, as I was beginning to say, is pretty aggressive, so you do get that good grip, and I can pretty much get a pretty decent grip on it with my gloves here. And I am wearing the gloves because I've been doing some lawn work lately and this hand got chewed up, so I wanted to spare you guys the visual on that. So first position, of course, is a winding position. Second position will change the date, as you see there at the between the 4 and the 5. And of course, the third position will change the time. So let's get up here to 10 after 10. Okay, and we'll wind that down for that 300 meters water resistance. Now you do have a 120 click rotating bezel, and there's some lume at the 12 o'clock arrow over here. And let's talk about lume here. When I first opened up this the box and saw this watch for the first time, I was taking a look at it and I was like, wow, that bezel, that's a pretty thick bezel there. You know, it's got some aggressive grooves there to help turn the bezel. And then I was looking and I'm like, wow, that chapter ring is pretty deep. And then I noticed that the dial is set pretty deep. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's interesting. You know, it is a 300 meter diver. Maybe, you know, it's kind of like a design to work with the thickness of the case. And then I realized that probably the reason why the dial is seated so deeply here is that if you notice on the hands, there are some cylinders here. And I was like, wait a second, let me try to get a zoomed in. I gotta take the glove off here, zoom it in a little bit and try to get focus. There are tritium tubes and on the hands, and as well on the hour markers. So not your typical like Luma Bright that you will see like on a Seiko, but you do have these tritium tubes that will illuminate the hands and the hour markers, but it does it at a very low glow. And Marathon is claiming that after 24 hours in darkness, you can still see that glow. So it's not going to be as bright as a Seiko, for example, a Seiko diver, but it'll last a whole lot longer, which is pretty neat. And I guess if you're going to deep dive for a while, and you're going to have a lack of light, that the tritium really kicks in. But it's also a little bit hazardous. So let's move those hands again, and if you notice on the dial, once I get this popped open, you see this little hazard symbol there, and that's because there is some tritium there, and you don't want these cylinders to break and then the sapphire crystal to break, because it could be bad for you. Now, getting back to how I started this conversation here about the dial and this deep set, these tritium tubes are cylinders, so they're not flatly applied to the hands. They are, like I said, cylinders, so they have some three-dimensional shape to it, so you have to have spacing between the hands. So if you notice that the hour hand is in the bottom and there's some spacing with the minute hand and then the second hand. I'm doing the best I can here, so I apologize if the visual is not coming through. But you get the idea, and that's why you'll see, instead of perhaps having the dial closer up and having a domed crystal, which would add thickness to this already pretty thick diver, they seated the dial further in to play with that space. And it is powered by the Swiss ETA 2824-2, which is a 28,800 beats per hour movement, 42-hour power reserve. And back to the dial, you do have your typical 1 through 12 numbering system for the hours, and then in the inside those numbers you have the military time. Marathon U.S. government automatic 300-meter water resistance in red to add a splash of color to the watch. So let's jump into the positives and negatives, the likes, dislikes, where this watch can improve. I love the look of this watch and the total tool aspect of this diver. It's just rugged and tough, and it actually feels really good on wrist. The dimensions are great: 41 case diameter, 48 millimeters lug to lugs. The thickness is okay at 14 millimeters. I don't really mind it so much. There is some heft to the watch, but that's okay. I'm used to heavy watches, so not an issue for me. Like I said, I like the history of Marathon and the part it's played with our military and issuing watches and some of the watches used by our military. It's pretty fascinating stuff, and I kind of like the throwback to using the tritium tubes, even though I really, I'm never going to deep dive 300 meters with this watch, and I'm not really that loom crazy, but it is kind of different, and it'd be a nice little addition to the collection. Some of the things where I think are a negative or can be improved upon, well, I'm not really crazy about the bracelet, and especially this part here, the stamped part of the clasp. This watch MSRP's for a little over $1,200, and you could probably find it for under $1,000 if you looked hard enough, and pre-owned even lower than that. But I think a watch at this price range may deserve a better clasp. I mean, you see micro brands in the $400, $500 range that have milled out clasps and are fantastic. So I think where Marathon could improve is with this clasp system that they have. Also, there were some links removed before I got it, but I needed to remove some more. As you can see, I couldn't really give you a full wrist roll there because I didn't remove the links. And the interesting is you have screws on both sides of the bracelet here, but both sides of these links. So I was able to remove one screw by putting a screwdriver in here and holding it steady and unscrewing here and then unscrewing back over here. And that was fine. And then I needed to remove another one, and it got a little hairy there. Like I was I was afraid to apply too much pressure and strip the thread and the screw, so I didn't want to go any further. So, just keep that in mind. You can get these on rubber. That is an option. Like I said, these, little negatives here, I think they're areas of improvement. They're not like a total 100% negative, I would say. Just, give me a better system here, especially if you're going to pay good money for a really great watch. Don't get me wrong, this watch is awesome. And I think, a clasp is something that you should be able to get right, you know, especially if you're trying to sell this off as a deep, deep dive diver, man. I would think, I know it does have the diver's extension, and that's great and all, but I mean, give me something more substantial here. I feel like this watch has a rough and tough reputation, so let's make sure that it keeps consistent with that. Other than that, I mean, I really, really like this watch, and I can see how many people are attracted to Marathon because of its history, and this watch in particular because of its history and its toughness. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.